Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are literally going back in time to Chrono Trigger. Because ladies and gentlemen, this is everybody's favorite JRPG, the one that changed it all, and it's the one that I played so extremely late that the first playthrough I ever did for it was just a little bit over a year ago. Now, as we were finding our footing here on Retro Rebound, we did a lot of experimenting, what content works, what content doesn't, and Chrono Trigger, I personally feel, fell into the line of fire with a couple of other games that I want to tread back to and replay and talk about in a video with more detail. When I rewatched my Chrono Trigger video, while I'm happy with it, I feel like I just skimmed over the surface on things I really liked, and I feel a game of this caliber deserves a deeper dive. And as I dove deeper into it, I realized there are some things I like and some things I actually don't like too much about Chrono Trigger, but overall is a game that deserves to be celebrated, so I thought I would go back to it in today's video. So if you're new here and you're into nostalgic and retrospective content, you're in the right place, consider subscribing, and now let's find out if I was wrong about Chrono Trigger. Beyond talking about the impact of Chrono Trigger, which I think goes without saying, let's talk about that story. To me, this is something that I feel I didn't give enough credit to in my first video talking about Chrono Trigger. And I have to say, going back to it, the thing that impressed me the most about this game was pace. I feel like Chrono Trigger is such a quick JRPG. And as time went on, we got really far from that style of game, which is funny because the way that JRPGs were defined for so long and still in a lot of places today was, oh, these have to be 80+ hour behemoths. And if you're 50 hours, you're considered a smaller JRPG. It's a you-know-what measuring contest out in the JRPG lands. However, there was a time you'd have something like Chrono Trigger, which you could put maybe 30 hours into, and you'd be done with it. And that was it. Now, that's not accounting for multiple endings, secret bosses, and all the like that you could find. However, what really impressed me right off the rip, and maybe it was a little bit quicker because I was a bit familiar, especially with the opening parts of the game, was how quickly I got into the thick of the plot, how it didn't really waste the player's time. And that's something that really benefits a classic, I feel, right? Is when you go on those reruns and as you gain more and more love for the title, it's that it doesn't take too long to get to the stuff that you remember so fondly. It's not like certain games I adore, like Final Fantasy XII, where I find the beginning stretch particularly elongated, but as you get into the middle parts of some epic boss fights, some real character development, it's like, there's the stuff I really loved. You really don't have to fight to get into the meat of why Chrono Trigger is considered a special game. To me, it's not only the pacing of the story, but I love the ragtag nature of the party members that you get. Whether it be a queen rejecting her roles, you could consider that a bit of a stereotype, but that's where you have to look at it through the nostalgic lens. Or you think of Luca, more of this, I just view her as Bulma 2.0, especially with the art style from Akira Toriyama. I'm like, yeah, that's Bulma right there, and I think that type of stuff is rad. All the way down to Robo and Frog, these very unlikely party members that you stumble upon and encounter, and I just love the unoriginality of their name. Like, oh, you found a robot? Guess what the name suggestion is when you add them to the party? Robo. Same thing with the Frog. What are we gonna call it? Frog. You know, when you look at nowadays parties, it's usually, your elven race, your long-haired swordsman, which you still have inside Chrono Trigger, of course, in Chrono himself, but you start to see it be a bit by the books. But in this game, it's just all over the place with amphibians and robots and humans and mechanics and all the like, and they all play differently, which really enhances the gameplay, which I think is partially the best aging part of the game. But it's really the pace, the characters, and I have to say, the way they introduce time travel into the story is handled better than most movies and shows and games today that are all obsessed with multiverses and time traveling, which is kind of hilarious because I feel like we're all running out of ideas on how to do this. And then you look at Chrono Trigger, which was one of the first to do it. The way you end up seeing how the world was destroyed and learning that this is something that you must try to actively prevent, and what it eventually develops into. It's the way that they use the art in an intelligent manner, how they gradually bring you from the present to the past and then to the future. The way it's all handled without feeling like they're trying to rush you into the next set of brand new assets is what makes this story so great to me. It's the pace, the characters, and continuously building upon what's there without wasting any time. I love JRPGs, probably my favorite genre nowadays, but there's a degree of time wasting in them nowadays, especially the extremely long ones. And even some of my favorites, like I love Persona 5 Royal, I love every minute I spent in it, but I definitely can't sit here and tell you with an honest face, hey, every single minute that you spend in Persona 5, they make the most of it. Like you'll just sometimes be wandering around Shinjuku and that'll be it. And you'll buy some food and that's all you do for the day. Not that exciting, but Chrono Trigger, I just feel has a strong forward momentum, which is why when it stops that forward momentum because of where the game is dated, that you see it stumble a little bit. But before I get into that, I want to talk gameplay because it's the best aging part of the game, and it's why when the momentum is stopped, which is usually through the gameplay, it does hurt the experience a bit, in my opinion, in that second run through. So Chrono Trigger is a game that really you'll recognize if you've played an older Final Fantasy game with the bar that gradually fills and your turn is ready. However, ironically so, or maybe not so ironic, the way it uses timing in battle is one of the special elements of it that I didn't note in my original video that I thought was so cool. When I was escaping the prison with Chrono, one of the things I liked most was when I fought the sentries and they were hiding behind shields. I accidentally attacked one of them and realized I did no damage because I had to time my attack with when they moved the shield. That's just something you don't even see in turn-based games nowadays. Right now, turn-based games, and I understand why, time freezes when it's your turn and time freezes for you when it's the enemy's turn, right? And so this game continues the passage of time literally, not just in the story, but in the gameplay, and it makes it interactive. I just found that type of stuff really engaging because it's not just about, oh, I have to rush and pick a spell or a move before the enemy goes or else I'm going to lose a step in the battle. And while that's definitely a good fit, you can turn that off by going from active to wait. So when you're in the tech menu or the combo menu or the items menu, time will stop. But it's in those moments where enemies and specific encounters make great use of that is where Chrono Trigger shines. It's not only that, but bosses and their unique setups. I mean, these are some of the greater boss fights I've personally experienced, and the game is over 20 years old. I think of course, the Dragon Tank boss fight being a famous one, really because of the art direction. It's the way they set certain things up visually, but it's also in that the game has a very delicate balance, at least in the first half, of not overwhelming you with mobs while having the centerpiece of the boss fight be the most interesting. Like when I'm fighting this big Devastator-like machine and it's spawning out these pods, right? And as the pods are spawning out, they are attacking me whenever I attack the main machine. So the game is visually communicative constantly because of that fantastic art style. So it's not just setting up a beautiful shot, which made me start to think a bit of Octopath Traveler, especially when I was running around and I noticed all my party members were following me. Again, Octopath Traveler vibes through the roof on that. It's that it's not just a pretty shot, but how they visually communicate to the player certain gameplay details that make those battles not just engaging, but thought-provoking. So I just love how they continue to do that throughout the whole experience. There are parts, though, where it does trip up. But before we get to that, I want to get into that complete in-box experience, right? Let's see what a Nintendo DS copy of Chrono Trigger, the best version to play apparently, comes with. Beyond the poster, which is already out. So sorry about that. We already hung it up. But the rest is right in here. All right, here we have a complete in-box copy of Chrono Trigger on the Nintendo DS. Before you ask, a lot of people have already said it, I'll say it again, this is the best version to pick up. Not just because of the feature quality, but also because of your wallet. You don't want to pick up an SNES version unless you have strong nostalgic ties, in which case go crazy. But if you're looking to play this game in the best possible way, don't go download it on Steam. Try your best to play it on the Nintendo DS. Why is that, you may be wondering? Well, the back of the box does a bit of the explaining here, where it says the RPG of the ages returns. When a newly developed teleportation device malfunctions, young Chrono must journey through time to rescue a mysterious girl from an intricate web of past and present perils. Enhanced with dual screen presentation styles, controls, and a host of great new features, the classic tale transcends time once again. With bonuses including brand new dungeons and a multiplayer arena, and timeless gameplay feels fresher than before. I think the dual screen feature is the main reason you're gonna wanna pick this one up. It just makes organizing, healing, all that stuff a lot easier. Is the bonus dungeon great? Yes. Is the multiplayer arena stuff cool? Absolutely, you can check both those out if you so desire, but to me, I think it's the dual screen feature, and it also includes some of those anime cutscenes. Now, let's go ahead and crack it on open. There we have the cartridge, you have the manual. Like I said earlier, we have the map, but the map is hung up on the wall, so it's not here, but it would come with a complete box copy of the game. You're gonna have to pardon me, I just don't want to risk ripping the poster and destroying it thanks to the tape I'm using. All right, so let's take a look at the manual, which is, of course, get ready, illustrated. We love to see that. This is where the Akira Toriyama art really shines. I mean, hello, Dragon Ball. Can you not see the Trunks future arc here? My gosh, absolutely beautiful. It starts off by saying, the gates of time stand open. Beyond their darkened threshold lies the path ordained by fate, journey to the forgotten past, the distant future, and even the very end of time. An epic tale that spans the ages has already begun, with a breakdown and illustration of each of the characters that will eventually join your party. This is another character that's just extremely unapologetically Dragon Ball. Again, Akira Toriyama art makes sense, but this reminds me of, I think it's Bulma's sister, and then Luca literally is Bulma 2.0. But there you have Robo, beautiful little robot there. It goes through the controls, the title screen, everything you're gonna see here throughout the game, exploring the world and the interactions, the world map and the area maps. This is where dual screen is a big feature. You'll see in the gameplay as I'm exploring around, it's gradually filling out a map. While it doesn't fix some of the quote timelessness of the game, where there are some dungeons that still get a little confusing, it does help with initial navigation. Knowing just the direction to go in is a big part of the winning recipe here. When they start to layer things where a lot of levels start to have elevation is where you can get a little bit confused, especially when you accidentally find a secret. Like when I accidentally found my way into the secret cells in the tower that Chrono was arrested within. I remember finding my way into a cell with a bunch of chests and thinking, well, okay, this is cool, great rewards. Where to from here though? Continuing on beyond the area maps, we have the inns, the shops, the weapon and armor types that you'll see throughout the game, as well as warping the various gates and of course the end of time itself and how you're going to maneuver through it. Just a lot here. Very dense game, especially for its time, an equipment menu, all the attributes and what they do, obviously very important for character leveling, your inventory, your bestiary techs, your tech list, and how you learn magic and whatnot. Your party navigation screen, battle commands, battle screen. We skipped a page here. Hold on, there's just so much here. Initiating battle. One of the best parts of the game, of course, is the initiation of battle. The fact that it all happens in real time just makes it timeless. You have that random nature of battles where sometimes an extra enemy may spring in, but at the same time, you can control when you do and don't encounter enemies, which I don't have an issue at all with random encounters. I know some players do, and I get why. I still think it's totally fine. It's a good way to make sure the focus is the map and the exploration and all that stuff, the interactive nature of the world. If it provides that stuff, it can still be totally fine, but Chrono Trigger kind of threads the needle in a really unique way, which not many games do up until now. With Sea of Stars is starting to try that out. Here they break down the differences in game modes, where you have DS and then you have the classic vibe, so you can play however you want if you get the DS version, so you're not losing out on that classic experience. They have status ailments broken down, another list of the text that'll be broken down here, so you can get the MP cost and what everyone here gets and kind of figure out what your parties want to be, the dual text, and then the more exclusive content like raising a monster, arena battles. This stuff is just really, really cool. And then battling in the pit, arena combat. And here we're at the end of the manual with little Final Fantasy mini set here, which I love all these eras of Final Fantasy being represented. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is your complete inbox copy of Chrono Trigger. So now with all of that done with, let's get into a few critiques I have with the game. Okay, so I've delayed long enough, haven't I? What don't I like about Chrono Trigger? You know, I think one of the things I was afraid of doing with Retro Rebound in the early going was coming across negative about people's favorite classics, because you get a lot of old man, you just don't get it energy with that. And I wanted to make sure I came in with a lot of respect. Now that I'm comfortable, I'm here to talk smack about your favorite games. I'm kidding. What I mean is, I think this was a positive place, and it still is, but I was afraid at times to be critical. And so now I'm just not as afraid. Y'all have been so welcoming and nice. So anyway, long way of saying, let me get into my criticisms of Chrono Trigger. One thing I've had a problem with going back with this game is that I feel like there are moments that it just holds you up so horribly so. And maybe back then it wasn't that big of a deal, but I think of when you find Robo and you're in this derelict factory and the game felt like it was about to move you to the next step. Like, let's go through the time gate and move to the next chapter in the story. But they're like, no, we gotta go back to this factory and activate this thing to get to that thing. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll allow all that. All right, fine. A little padding's not gonna hurt anybody. But then it's when it introduces a frustrating mechanic. Like every time you touch an enemy, you get dropped on the conveyor belt. And this is why sometimes it's tough to complain about all-time classics, because there's so many people who have ran through the game probably 5 times more than me at this point, and they're looking at me with an eyebrow raised going, bro, really? You had trouble with that part? Trust me, I've been doing this long enough where I get the really bro type energy from a lot of Square Enix bros, and I get it because I've had critiques of all of Square Enix's games. I love many of them, but I've had little critiques like that, and I never hear the end of it. But I digress. I think it's fair to say that there are moments that the game feels certifiably old. And it's one of those things where I see a lot of video essays saying it's perfect, nothing's ever wrong. But I think it's because there's a failure to look through the lens of someone like myself and many others out there who either haven't played for the first time or don't have the benefit of me with Knights of the Old Republic. I did mention this in my original Chrono Trigger video, but it was more from an adoration standpoint. But with me and Knights of the Old Republic, it's such an easy recommendation, but I don't think about how Terrace is laid out terribly, how Kashyyyk is laid out terribly, and for new players, it can be confusing to get around. For those who have replayed KOTOR a million times, you know how to navigate these planets. However, for the newcomer, it can be confusing. Same thing goes with Chrono Trigger, right? That's how I'm looking at it. I could go into Chrono Trigger maybe 2, 3, 4 more times, and that Robo Factory may be a breeze and one of the best parts of the game once you finally know what to do. But from a, if you will, new age standpoint, I have to say that this was one of the particular snags in my experience. Were moments throughout the story where things were getting held up because of tough dungeons. I think of the elevator sequence as well in Chrono Trigger, which felt borderline endless. I mean, it can happen time in, time out, and it can wear you down in an otherwise shorter playthrough, which I think is why I wanted to address some of the flaws, because I was thinking, well, this isn't even that long of a game. It's not really asking for so much of my time in comparison to what we typically experience in games nowadays, and I'm starting to wear a little bit thin on my patience, so that is something worth addressing. And I think that's fine at the end of the day. Not to dismiss actual problems with the game, but you know, age is going to play a factor with something this old. It's impressive that that's really one of the few problems I have with it. And it makes the decision right now by Square Enix all the more confusing unless they're working on something and we don't know about it. Why haven't we got an Octopath-style Chrono Trigger remake is beyond me. I just feel it's an easy slam dunk. But that's also why I feel like Square is holding back on us a little bit. I feel like they're probably looking at it like, yo, we are running out of cash and we need a quick little pick-me-up. Yeah, maybe we'll do a little bit of that Chrono Trigger remake, right? That's like the ace up the sleeve. The way I look at it is like Ubisoft with a Japanese set Assassin's Creed. I think Ghost of Tsushima took the wind out of their sails now. But for a while, I've always believed Ubisoft would not do the highly requested set Assassin's Creed in Japan type move because they were waiting until they were running out of money to take the ace out of their sleeve and put that card into play. Same thing here with Chrono Trigger and a remake, because Chrono Cross is back, but Chrono Trigger needs to be accessible on modern hardware, and I think it needs the update in some areas. Like imagining it on the level of Final Fantasy VII Remake, to me, is just an easy selling point right there. However, I think a lot doesn't need to change if they were to remake it. Truly, I think the art style is fantastic and timeless. But also what I think is kind of timeless is the gameplay mechanics themselves. So I love the time-based nature of the gameplay. I already went into that. But it's also the mechanics within it, like the cross attacks, where you could mix together like aura and the laser beam attack to do an aura beam that heals your whole party, or a fire spiral between Luca and Chrono, and the list goes on. There are lots of ways for these party members to interact, so it encourages all these different compositions, which again just makes the game fun. And then you factor in, for me, a weird type of nostalgia where I think of the time travel sequences where you can go to different parts and times in the world. And I think a lot of Final Fantasy 13 too, which I did mention in the original video. That was my first encounter with like JRPG time travel. And now I realize Square Enix was kind of just running an old play back then, but oh my God, I love 13 too. And so I kind of get, in a way, how people feel about Chrono Trigger, because that was my first experience with this cool time travel-y JRPG. And to have that back in the 90s would have been absolutely nuts. It's just the way things are handled. And of course, the combination of minds and talents that make Chrono Trigger an exceedingly unique property, right? The Akira Toriyama art style, but then you have the minds of Final Fantasy behind it. It's just a power dream project. So it's exceedingly rare. And I think it's something that I appreciate Square has in a bit of a time capsule until they end up wanting to do something with it. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, from top to bottom, Chrono Trigger is still great. I just had a couple of snags in this return run here that I thought were worth addressing, and upon watching my older video, I was like, I'm not terribly proud of that at the end of the day. I think I can do a little bit better. So hopefully you think I did. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of Chrono Trigger? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Let me know down below. Other than that, take great care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace